But here, we, as I said before, only know the state of Israel. Every generation before us, for 2,000 years, can't even relate to that. And so the Rav says, at this point, there were 6 miracles of the state. Now, run through them very quickly because you've heard of them before. The first one, of course, that the United Nations, Soviet Russia, United States, all the countries, they voted for a state. If you go to Katimon in Yerushalayim, there's a street that's called Chaf Tet November, November 29th. November 29th, 1947 was the year that in late success the United Nations voted for the state of the creation of a state. Ask anybody now, would you even think about the United Nations making a vote, a pro-Israel vote? If you don't call that a miracle, what can I tell you? Number 2, you would say from the Shoah, from the Holocaust. We're generation 2, most of generation 3, but from the Holocaust, a generation that was almost completely wiped out, 6 million Jews. From this ashes comes the state of Israel 3 years later. So I said, is that a miracle? I don't know what it is. The third miracle, he said, in 1948, 60 million Arabs wanted to throw us into the sea. They weren't successful. Every country, all those nations that Chaf Tet November 29th, 1947 voted, yes, we'll give you a state, but you're on your own. No one's going to give you anything, no aid, there's nothing coming from America. Yeah, I think you could read an article, if anyone's interested, we'll send you an article, how Rabbi Lamb, Michael just sent it out today, Rabbi Lamb, the president of Yeshiva University, went up to the Catskills, and he was at a bullet factory to make bullets to send it to Eretz Yisrael in 1948. That was the American aid that was coming. But we defeated them. Pretty good. Number 4, and number 5, and number 6, the Rav, who is a great philosophy individual, he's so philosophical. The Christian church, the Catholic Church, believes that the Jew will only return to Zion, will only return to his homeland through their Messiah. And that wasn't happening. Because now we're going back, and the Vatican and the Church could not handle the fact that we were returning on our own. Till 1962, the Vatican Church, until Pope John the 23rd, when he said, hey, they had what's known as the Ecumenical Council, exactly. And they had that, and they voted, hey, we're not going to blame you for the death of our guard, and by the way, we're going to recognize Israel. This is 1962. Do the math, 18 years after, 1862 plus 48, 14 years after the creation of the state. They were not going to, and here, we're going back. Now number 5 and number 6. Number 5 is the one we all feel. Tomorrow morning, if anyone here feels they want to go to Israel, I can get you to Israel before Shabbos. Now, what time is it now?
9 o'clock.
I could get you on the 11 o'clock flight, you'll get there by 5 o'clock, you'll be in Israel. That is a miracle.
No nice trip for
Wait,
10 days.
are you really offering? Because
If you're going, are you going?
I would go.
Okay, we'll talk
That's
later.
my boss.
Becca, you have to
We'll
pay
talk
for
later.
it. He'll book the flight.
Don't scare me because you're a lot cheaper than getting you net tickets. I want you to know. Now, the fact is, that was fun that we have a country to go to. Every survivor, Holocaust survivor, will tell you, why didn't you try to escape? Because there's no place to go. You had no place to go. My father told me he was in Plaszow. And in Plaszow, one guy escaped. And what they did, if you saw Schindler's List, that was the Schindler's List, they got every inmate out. Every 10th inmate was shot. That, the 5th miracle, we have a place to go. And the 6th miracle is what we saw in all the film clips we saw, that we have an army. That if you hit us, we're going to hit you back. And we're going to hit you back hard. When Jews were taken to Entebbe, who got them out? When there was Ethiopians who were lost in Ethiopia, they had to get out, who got them out? Our soldiers, our boys. So you have the 6 miracles. And later I'll tell you, what I think is the 7th miracle. But the question you have to ask ourselves, what? Those are the miracles, but what made the nation of Israel, Eretz Yisrael, every aspect of the nation, every aspect of our country, every aspect of our people have been an unbelievable success. I'm not just talking about the Hasidim. I'm not talking about the modern Orthodox. I'm not just talking about the Chilonim. Every aspect has just flourished. When I was a kid, they said, oh, the Israelis made the Negev green. Wow. It was a wow. But go further. You go to Eretz Yisrael now, they just don't stop building. I was in Kiryat Gat. Kiryat Gat is a town approximately 10 to 15 miles south of Beit Shemesh, around an hour and 15 minutes outside Yerushalayim. Unless you have a relative there, you're not going to Kiryat Gat. No reason, I'm not saying you're not going to like it, but it's nothing, it's like, how many people here visited Hicksville, Long Island? You're not going to Hicksville, you're not going to Kiryat Gat, okay? We get it. But I have to tell you something. When I went to Kiryat Gat 3 months ago, they were building 15,000 apartments. And they said everyone was sold in the development stage. Now, I don't know if anyone's here in real estate. If you meet a developer and he tells you that he was able to sell out his building during construction, that's a home run. Now he's telling me 15,000 apartments are just sold. You go all around and you see the country. What caused that success? In 1967, we all know about the 6-Day War. And I was in 8th grade, so you were in 10th grade. You were in 10th grade, right? And you were probably, and so we were high school students. And it was June 6th, the war started. We were taking finals. And we had a Gemara final. And we're in a room like this, and the final was that the head Rosh Yeshiva, the head rabbi, would come in, and what he would do, he would test us. This was Monday morning, the war started. Our teacher, the Rebbe, put a radio on the table. Put on WINS. You give us 22 minutes, we'll give you the world. And every 22 minutes, he would put the radio back on. We listened to the news, shut the radio off, and for the next 22 minutes, we'd say to Helen, shut the radio off again. So you have to understand the first day of the war, Egypt, Nasser was stating that he's entering Tel Aviv. He tells to Hussein, why don't you join me? This is easy. We're going right through Tel Aviv. Israel was saying nothing. And basically, we were in the dark. All the rest of the world didn't know what was going on. Nothing was leaping out. Monday, we felt this fear that Am Yisrael is in sakana, is in jeopardy. No ifs, ands, or buts about it. And what I felt that week, it wasn't the success of the soldiers or the brilliant victories. It was the fact there was no such thing as a Haredi Jew, no such thing as a Hasidic Jew, no such thing as a Chiloni Jew. We were all in this together in a way that we were just one. And the world just looked at us and just said one word, wow, look at you guys. And it was such a power about this. Wednesday morning of the war, the news started coming out. It's a very interesting story. You all saw the picture, maybe you saw it. Rav Goren, who's the chief rabbi of Israel, chief rabbi of the army, blows shofar at the Kotel. Very famous picture. And he blows the shofar, and someone says, Rav Goren, Sahal is entering Hebron. He goes, what? You gotta remember, for 19 years, no Jew has been in Hebron, and even before that, no Jew was ever allowed in Marat HaMachpelah. How many of you have been in Israel? You've been to Hebron? You went up inside the mosque? Before 48, the Turks let us, there's a famous thing called the 7 steps. You were allowed to go up. If you go to Hebron next time, you'll see as you walk on Oy to the right, you'll see burnt marks there because that's where they used to light the candles. You couldn't get inside. The Turks didn't let you. Hebron was, that's it. So now for 19 years, we're never in there. Hebron is a city of 100,000 Arabs. And Goren hears that, and by the way, you consider Hebron now, I would say it's probably the most militant, one of the most militant cities of the Arab community. I mean, it's a Hamas stronghold. 19 Huh? Yes, exactly. Avram was looking at it. So far. So, as a kid, I learned about it in Polish. And I said, we're actually going to go into Hebron? We're actually going in? We're going to get in? Wow. It's Wednesday morning. But what the real history was, Goran just blows shofar. Someone goes over to him and says, by the way, Tzahal, the Israeli army, is entering Hebron. He gets so excited. Are you kidding me? He jumps into his Jeep with his driver, drives down to the city of Hebron, which is approximately 28 kilometers, 30 kilometers from Yerushalayim. He goes right in the square where you were, right in Hebron there. He gets out. There's only one problem. The Israeli Defense Forces didn't get there yet. He arrived before Tzahal. And the most amazing thing happened. The Arabs came out with a white flag, and they surrendered. And this rabbi with a beard over the mind, and with a little Sefer Torah, they said, here's the keys to the city. And that's how we captured Hebron. Not one shot was fired, and just handed it over. This Wednesday, we hear, as we're walking into this assembly, and I was in West Hempstead, Heber County, Nassau County, the word starts burning, Hebron b'yadenu. We have Hebron. They asked us, there's going to be a rally that Thursday in Washington, D.C. Who wants to go? We want to get an idea. Would anyone want to go? The whole 7th, 8th, and 9th grade stood up in unison and said, we're all going. Every yeshiva that I knew took buses, were going down to Washington. One yeshiva had a yearbook. They decided to do away with the yearbook, give all the money to Eretz Yisrael, and the yearbook was mimeograph papers. We went down to Washington. You can imagine the amount of buses just going down on the Jersey Turnpike 95. But there's one thing that I remember that sits in my memory. When you have all these buses, you know buses break down. And on the side of the road on 95 going down to Washington, D.C., there was 2 buses on the side broken down. But outside were students, Jewish students, outside the bus with Israeli flags, just waving the flags and waving the buses on. And we all just got out the window and just started cheering. And that's the memory I have. Not the memory of the soldiers going in. To me, the memory was the togetherness, the pride to be Jewish, the pride that I used to walk to shul in my town. I wore a yarmulke, so I was the rabbi. I lived in a town that was 3 years, we used to call them 3 times a year Jews. What's 3 times a year Jews? Rosh Hashanah, Yom Kippur. And all of a sudden, these people who basically says, I don't know anything about this stuff, came up to me and says, wow, way to go. I said, way to go, I didn't do anything. No, you've always been there. And we were so together that was the success of that war. And it made me think. So what was the success that Israel enjoyed? We know the miracles. God did the 6 miracles. We got it. You might even say there's a 7th miracle. What's the 7th miracle? When I said before in Kiryat Gat, there's 15,000 apartments being built. You have to realize, when we would go to Israel, did anyone here remember the first time you went, how much was the exchange rate? It was approximately 4 to 1. Exactly. 4 shekel to $1. What's the exchange rate today?
340.
340? I think that's high.
It went up.
It went up?
Just went up.
Just went up. It was like 320, went down to 318. The shekel, in my opinion, is stronger than the dollar. How is that possible? We had the Great America. There used to be a joke that when after the 6-Day War, America loved the Israeli generals. Rabin, Dayan, we love your generals. So the Israelis said, okay, we'll make a trade. We'll give you all our generals. You give us your generals. Well, whose generals you want? He goes, General Motors, General Electric, General Dynamics. 5 years ago, Israel called back. You know what they said? Take back your General Motors, take back your General Electric. Not exactly what we thought they were. What was interesting that the fact was that in Israel now, every internet company, from Amazon, Microsoft, Intel, they all have a presence in Israel. This is the first time, and someone, I would let someone to say I'm wrong, to point out differently, and Jack here, my good friend Jack, he will tell me that I'm wrong. He gets off to tell me that I'm wrong. He's fact-checked me right now. You don't see him doing it, but he's doing it. He would love to tell me that I'm wrong. But every company comes to Israel, and they're paying Israeli salaries. We have a friend, Effie, who lives in Israel, has a computer company. He says to me, I can't get a programmer. For me to get a programmer, I don't interview them. They interview me. I go, what are you talking about? Every company, all the foreign companies are offering us some jobs. I have to pay 50,000 shekel a month. That's 600,000 shekel a year. That used to be $150,000 before. Now the great Intel has to pay 200,000. So for the first time in the history of civilization, I could say that foreign companies, foreign countries are coming into Israel, not for the cheap labor, not for the Chinese labor. They're not coming for the oil in the ground, and they're not coming for the gold in the hills. What are they coming for? Chachmas Eretz Yisrael, the brains of the Jew. It never happened before. And they're coming, and they're paying the salaries, and that's why in the government, as some of you will know, the tax rate in Israel is one of the highest tax rates in the world. It's 50%. And the government is a 50% partner with every worker. So the money that's coming into Israel is all from outside. In our country, how do we all get money during COVID? The government printed it. That's called inflation. That's called the problem. That's called interest rates going up. That's called prices going up. In Eretz Yisrael, they're saying the money's coming in from outside. They don't have to print the money. How did that miracle happen? So I tell the story often because it made such an impression on me. The year was 1970. I was 18 years old, and I was in camp, working in a camp. It was a Hebrew-speaking camp called Machaneh Masad, and we had a speaker. Does anyone know what the JDL was?
Yeah, Jewish Defense League.
Exactly. So you had the Jewish Defense League had a speaker come to our camp. Now the Jewish Defense League was on the right side of town. They're right, very strong, very never again. Their hero is Jabotinsky. Jabotinsky believed the Jew has to be armed. He didn't believe in God, but he believed the Jew has to be armed. And JDL had Jabotinsky as their so-called model. What was interesting, the speaker comes in from the JDL to our camp. And the camp Masad was very Zionistic, but it was to the left. But 67, everybody was to the left. I mean, let's understand, things that happened in Eretz Yisrael were not always 100% the right thing. A lot of things that are gray. You can't talk negative Eretz Yisrael. You can't take Lashon Hara, but you have to say what the truth was, is that if you weren't in the Labor Party in the first 19 years, you weren't getting a job. It was going to be, you had to be part of labor. So in our camp, Zionistic, we shifted to the left. Okay, I was too young to know what that was about. So this JDL that gets up, talking to a crowd like this, and the head of the camp is sitting right here, and the head of the camp is listening to him, and he's talking about Jabotinsky. And he's saying that 1948, June of 1948, the ship called Altalena sails into the Tel Aviv harbor with ammunition that was going for the Irgun. Menachem Begin went onto the ship. Ben Gurion, this says, and Ben Gurion gives the order to shoot down, to sink the Altalena. Yitzhak Rabin follows the order. The ship is sunk. 16 Jewish soldiers are killed. I'm listening to this and I'm saying, what the heck is he talking about? I went to yeshiva all my life. I learned about Israel all my life. I go to an Israeli camp, and he's telling me there was a civil war going on in Israel. They never told us that. What's that about? Now, everyone's kind of looking, what's really? The head of the camp, the Shlomo Schulziger, who was this Israeli, he was German, very proper. He gets very excited, and he stands up and he goes, "Zelo Emet! Zelo Emet!" That's all this guy had to hear. He takes a book like this. Zakei Emet! Now we're all getting excited. What's going on here? Dr. Schulziger, as he was known, has a brother sitting in the back. And he says to him, stands up, and he's shaking. Now he's like a 65-year-old man. He's shaking. And his brother stands up and says, "Teshev, Shlomo. Sit down, Shlomo. Zakei Emet. It is true." And we all sat there. And he said, wow, what was that about? It's true. That's true of a lot of history. But what we don't say is what happened next. The next thing is Menachem Begin, the head of the Irgun. You know what he says? Put down your guns. We join the government. It ends right here. He uses the words that if you go to the Tayelet on Tel Aviv, across from the Don Hotel, you'll see the marker. It only took him 30 years to put the marker up, but there's a marker there with all 16 soldiers' names. And he said the words of Menachem Begin, Milchemet Achim Li'olam Lo. A civil war, a war of brothers, will never happen. Can never happen. But Menachem Begin, taking that and creating an automatic achdus of when you have a machlokes and you have a right to make a machlokes, a right to take revenge, you say, no. There's a bigger picture here. We have our country. We have what's going on. We stop it right here. He stopped it in the Negev balloon. He stopped it, and for some reason, every internet company feels they have to be in Israel. For some reason, when we had the COVID, how many of you people heard the line, "We're all waiting for Israel. Israel's going to come up with the vaccine. When Israel gets it, we'll be fine." What gave us that so-called confidence? The only thing I can say, a lot of times when we have people come to the shtibel downstairs, you have different type of people looking for different organizations. A lot of Hasidim, some with Kippas Rugot, different, every type of Jew. And I ask them one thing. Tomorrow night, you're going to be going back to Eretz Yisrael. You're going to see each other in the airport. Do me a favor. Don't make believe you're strangers. Don't make believe you never saw each other. Don't play the game. Do I know you? Don't do that. It's a fellow Jew. Greet him. Hug him. And that's what's going to bring us our geula. That is what we could do. People say to me, my kids say to me, "Dad, but what's your solution?" And I say to them, "Sorry, they said, Dad, what's your solution? Come on, you want the shtachim, you want all this. What is your solution? What's my solution? Very simple. It's a Kadosh Baruch Hu, the divine solution. It's been going on. It's like, for 2,000 years we waited. All of a sudden we get it. We said there were 6 miracles. 6 miracles gave us the country. Now Kadosh Baruch Hu, God's saying to us, what are you going to do with it? I gave it to you. It's a very, very hard thing when, a lot of you are from the former Soviet Union. And I remember, I felt very bad. In '78, I'm in Israel, and I pick up 2 soldiers, and they were from the former Soviet Union. So I asked them, this is '78, Brezhnev just opened the gates. And I said, Ech atam ohavim et haaretz? How do you love the land? And they go, Am Yisrael ohavim et ha'aliyah. They love the aliyah, aval lo et ha'olim. Not the ones who came. The fact of the matter is, and the biggest criticism on the right, and people say to me, in Russia I was known as a Jew. Here I'm a Russian. The fact is, we will only get what we need when we do it together. And if anything, Eretz Yisrael has shown us is the fact that the seventh miracle of the fact that every country wants to get the chachma of Eretz Yisrael. There's a very interesting question. I got a little. They say when Yaakov Avinu, Jacob, when he came back to go into the land, go back to Israel, he was scared of one person, his brother. His brother Esav wanted to kill him, and he was so scared of Esav that he split his camp into two. If Esav goes after you, the other camp goes free, and at least half of us will survive. So the question they ask, what was Yaakov so afraid of Jacob? Here he's promised. What was he so scared of? So people said that Esav had very much respect for his father Isaac. He had kibbud av. Kibbud av is very big. But at the same time, you have to say that Yaakov had kibbud aim. His mother said, pick up, get out, go see my brother, leave the land. Not an easy thing to do. He does it. He follows his mother, he follows his father. We get it. I used to say, what did Esav do? He killed the deer, he brings the deer back, and he gives his father food. Some of you who catch a deer will last you for the next year for winter for the amount of food you get from there. I mean, it wasn't exactly he was making a sacrifice, Esav, but here they're saying to us, this was his reward, and he had kibbud av, so Yaakov was afraid. No, I didn't buy it. What was Yaakov afraid of? What did Esav have that Yaakov didn't have? Where was Yaakov the last 36 years? Where? Exactly. Where was Esav?
Eretz Yisrael with his father.
Esav had Yishuv HaAretz. He had the brachas of Eretz Yisrael. Very good.
But if you don't keep the mitzvahs, you lose every possible goodness and privileges.
My friend, you should be sitting here not me. You're 100% right. We're given Eretz Yisrael, but HaKadosh Baruch Hu is saying, what are you going to do with it? How are you going to? You got it. Now, what are you going to do with it? And the only way we're going to do something with it is Achdus Ha'am. To get back to that feeling of 67. You know, in 67, I love the phrase we had, because you got to understand the amount of money that was coming out to give tzedakah to the country. They had a phrase, I don't know if you guys remember this, give until it hurts. And if it doesn't hurt, you haven't given enough. And you felt it. You felt it. Robert McNamara wrote a book about the Vietnam War in 67, and he has a paragraph about the Six-Day War. And he explains it away. We all knew that Israel was going to take apart the Arabs. We knew that was a fait accompli. And I remember reading it and said, I didn't know that. No one else knew that. We had a fear that we could lose it. My fear is that we're the generation. I hate to be the generation that lost Eretz Yisrael. And the only way we could stop that is really when you walk in the street this week and you see someone on Shabbos, you say good Shabbos to him. Only in New York City, when you say good Shabbos, the guy looks at you, what are you, crazy? You don't talk to people. You don't say good Shabbos. You don't do that. Make the world a little smaller in our sphere. And we will live to see miracles. The Eretz Yisrael is like you go there, and there's just like something about it, atah b'bayit. I will tell you, a gentleman in my office, Mr. Aaron Miller, he wanted to move to Israel, and he wanted to still work. So he goes back and forth, right? And thank God, it's been very successful for him, very successful for us. And Aaron's making a wedding. He's making a wedding next week. This wedding, as I say, there's another manager in our office. Her name is Donna Lagruscio. No, she's not Jewish, you're saying. It's an Italian name. And she says to me once, my grandmother was Jewish. I go, really? Was that your mother's mother? She goes, yeah. So your mother's mother was Jewish. I got a news flash for you. You're Jewish. Oh, no, I'm not Jewish. I do this and all that. I'm not Jewish. No, you're Jewish. No. I go, the only way I could explain it to you, that if 70 years ago we were in Europe, we'd be going to camp together on the trains. And it wouldn't be summer camp. It's that simple. She looks at me like this. So Aaron's making a wedding 3 years ago, and I had this brilliant idea. I wanted to know, is a thing called the Pintele Yid. Every one of us has that little spark. Now here's a third generation of having no practice. I was doing my social experiment. I was going to take Miss Donna LaRuccio and her husband to Eretz Yisrael. I just wanted to see, when they come off to go to this wedding, I wanted to see, do I have the Pintele Yid? So I had to do this. I had to invite all the managers to go to Eretz Yisrael. I don't want to single her out. So of course I invite the managers, and guess what? Her husband gets sick and she can't go. Okay. Aaron's making a wedding next week, as I said. And I said to Donna, this time you're going again.
She still works for you.
She still works for me.
That's an accomplishment.
That is an accomplishment. She's been with me for 27 years. And I said, you're going this time. Next year we'll talk. We'll be in Yerushalayim together. I'll let you know what happened. Chag Sameach.
Thank you everybody for coming. There's more refreshments on the way out. And want to have a Israel is
I have a question. Did they do something
And do you remember the name?
Two things I want to remember about it. The first time I was at the wall, Friday night at the hotel in Shabbat. Every Jew, I actually my daughter goes every night. Every type of Jewish person, no matter if you were religious, doesn't matter. You were a Jew and you were welcome. And the next thing the first war, number 5.
Thank you. So you saw the Russian video.
very close to
Take down my number if you
Everybody can They're gonna let you come in.
Yeah, we get free
I was going to Arab restaurants. I was doing. I walk down the street. Every day. They can come down and they can be citizens of
Yeah, but I mean, it's if you want to donate, okay, so let's take that number also. Once you get they took out the first time.
I need to know, give a finger, give another finger, then take the whole
I only got one answer.
You have time.
Oh, you want to be in touch with you? You want to be in touch with you? Eller dos, eller rapport dos.
There's no one.
You made it so many.
That's why Absalom.
Israel puts out